All right, looks like we got everybody come. Holy cow, the big group of people just came in. This is awesome. Welcome everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We'll give everybody a couple seconds to come on in. Good to see everybody. I am Chris Miano, and this is another Narratives with Integrity event. We've got a pretty action-packed hour ahead of us, so I do want to kind of get into things. But first off, for those of you returning, welcome back. It's been very fun doing this series. And this is one that we had circled for a while and we're very excited about. I'd love to see where y'all are joining from. So go ahead, let us know your organization in the chat. We're all united here kind of with our common interest in storytelling and how to leverage AI ethically and how that intersects with storytelling. So it's good to see other organizations that share those common values. So of course, special thanks and gratitude to our esteemed panelists for taking the time to share their insights about collecting and sharing stories and how that intersects with AI. This is obviously a very challenging and timely topic today. And we're going to ask some tough questions. And these questions were all submitted by you. So we didn't generate any softballs. So you guys better be ready, okay? Because we're coming. No, they're always good. We always have a lot of fun, and I always appreciate getting to hear everybody's questions. So thank you to everybody that took the time to submit. There were over 100 questions submitted. We tried to like synergize them a little bit and turn them into like bigger questions that we could ask the whole panel. And of course, I would be remiss if I did not thank my intrepid marketing director, Carly Euler. She does a great job of putting these together. So that we all have a chance to learn from these great panelists. This session is being recorded and will be sent to everyone who registered within 24 hours of the event. So if you have anybody that didn't attend or you think this would be cool to send them to, you will have the opportunity to do that. Just look out for that email from Carly. So without further ado, I will get into the panelists for today. Now, a little bit of housekeeping. Unfortunately, the great Taylor Wilson had to bow out at the last minute. Believe her child broke her arm or his or her arm. So they are dealing with something else, and family comes first, and we definitely get that. So let's introduce everybody who is here. So first off, we have Eric Tamales. He is the Chief Revenue Officer at Avid with 20 years of fundraising experience, raising millions of dollars for nonprofit organizations such as St. Jude, Sigma Nu, Boy Scouts, Allegheny Health, as well as he's served as an executive leader at Pursuant Ketchum, Virtuous, and now, of course, Avid. At Avid, Eric believes that generosity is driven by our passions and relationships, and givers want to feel like they are part of a movement bigger than themselves, and I think we can all agree on that. Carly wrote here that I'm supposed to say go Steelers, but I will not. I will instead say go Bills.
I mean, I travel with my own terrible child. Is that okay? I mean,
if I were to put on the list of things I know about you, that's number one probably. No, but great to have you, man, and great to see you again.
Thanks for having me.
So next up, we have the phenomenal Tim Lockey, who I'm sure many of you have heard talk before and seen a lot of the content that he's produced. He's been in nonprofits and tech for over 20 years. Over the last decade, he founded Now IT Matters and The Human Stack, which I highly recommend everyone checking out. Dedicated to helping nonprofits succeed with their technology, which I know is, as a CEO of a software company in the nonprofit space, I know that is always a work in progress, and we're all working together on that. As a former Salesforce MVP and partner, Salesforce.org Equality Partner, a Microsoft partner, his experiences have shown him the impact of system deficiencies on organizations. That's why he is passionate about creating access to digital transformation for all nonprofits, regardless of their size and access to resources. So thank you, Tim. It's wonderful to have you today.
Great to be here. Yeah.
That's great. And finally, last but not least, it is a pleasure to have Meena Das joining us. Meena Das is the founder and CEO of Namaste Data. She is a human-centric data and AI equity consultant for nonprofits and social impact agencies with more than 15 years of experience in both the tech and nonprofit industry. Mina is also a former data analyst for Amazon and a program manager at Microsoft. At her core, she supports nonprofits in doing their best when work using data and AI. Wonderful to have you. We're all very excited for your input on a lot of these. We consider you one of the foremost experts, so we're really excited to hear all your thoughts.
Thank you so much for having me, Chris. I also want to say I am also the person who has a lot of cold. So if you hear me not wanting to answer anything, know that it's not because I'm not nerdy enough. I am. It's just I'm unable to talk. And Chris, I love the picture that is next to you on the wall. As you were talking, I got to see the one. Yep. The very famous by the famous artist.
My son.
Yep. Love it.
Gabriel Picasso. Yes, thank you. I always love looking at that picture. I appreciate you saying that. All right, well, we've got everybody, so let's go ahead and get to the first question. All right, so this question is from Aaron, and the topic is AI input considerations. And this is for everybody. We'll start with Tim, Eric, and Mina, or just take whatever flow it takes us. So at a high level, right, what items should not be entered in AI? Names, locations, other identifiable information, but I would even add an addendum to this: pictures, eventually videos, content. What type of stuff should not be entered as a rule? We'll start with you, Tim.
Yeah. I mean, this is an impossible question to answer, so I'm glad to be first on it. I'd like to start. I think the direction on this question needs to be about breaking up data between type 1, type 2, which I can never keep track of. So just think of it as data you'd put on Facebook and data you wouldn't, right? If it's on your, if it's an event, you know, you're going to put it on there. If it's a photo of an event, you can put it on Facebook, right? Because you want to promote that. That's fine in any AI system because you're already putting it out in the world. Where it gets complicated is non-Facebook data. If you would not want to put it on Facebook, right, then what's complicated about that? And I'm just going to give you my simple rule, which is to choose a base system that you use, and that should be either Google or Copilot, depending on what your business app is. And choose that, and you're not looking at additional risk of putting things on Gemini or Copilot if that's already your workspace, right? So instead of thinking about which AI or which data, think of it, reverse the question to which systems are safe to use this kind of data. And if you're already using that cloud and you're already behind their cybersecurity policy, you're already behind their data privacy policy, then actually you can use that as needed with no additional risk. I always get really nervous saying that because I get so many people that are really, really worried about that, and it's the right thing to be worried about. And I haven't heard anybody else say it's okay to do that. So, but that just on my research, that's what I found. That's what I encourage organizations to do.
Great, Eric. Anything to add to that?
You know, I mean, I love Tim going first, by the way, because this is a hard question, but it's also, it's one of those ones that's like right down the middle. You know, like the short rule that I would subscribe to is like, if you wouldn't want to put it on a billboard, don't put it into your AI. Right. Like we work with our nonprofits, we work with sensitive data. You know, I come from healthcare background. We dealing with patients and, you know, family issues and personal information, all that information, like addresses, health info, financial, that should not be entered into a generative AI, right? Like you shouldn't be able to say, hey, let's download a donor prospect list and then upload it into ChatGPT or Claude or whomever and say, who should I visit with this week? Who should I call? That is not what you should be doing, right? But we need to have like explicit consent and safeguards in place to be able to make sure it's the correct type of data, you know, anonymize all the different areas. Like, you know, we at Avid, we encourage our organizations to, you know, really treat the AI prompts the same way they treat any of those public channels. Take out those identifiers, anonymize where possible, keep the dignity, the privacy of our donors, our beneficiaries front and center. And then really just at the end of the day, our AI can be a really powerful tool, but it's not worth risking the trust, you know, and that's a real big thing when I think through this is a lot of us as nonprofit leaders, We all could be all out there selling widgets in for-profit space, but the reality is we're selling that trust of the donor to give to our organization, and it's not worth taking that risk and being careless with this confidential information.
Anything to add to that?
I mean, both of my friends said good things. I'm just going to focus on the data points. I work a lot with survey data, or data collection from interviews and focus groups. So that's definitely something we should ensure that we are anonymizing. We are not uploading. I've seen people uploading entire survey responses with demographic information attached next to phone number, attached next to address, attached next to email address. That is something we have control of, and we can anonymize it. But I've also seen people uploading or linking to their website, which we say is a publicly available information. But most websites also have, or not most, but some also have the email address or phone number of the executive director, of the staff members, of the volunteers. Well, that is being fed into the website through the website into these ChatGPT or Gen AI like tools. So we have to be careful, what data are we inputting it from? What's the source of it? What's the implication of it when we are inputting something? To what extent can we anonymize something? But rule of thumb, never include anything that's personally identifiable and is taking away the dignity and the care of that data point.
Wonderful. Yeah. And one thing that's been cool is seeing these little tech companies that are sprouting up specifically for AI use for nonprofits. And I think that's a cool angle, as I would, of course, always trust those vendors more than ones that are more geared towards for-profit. It's been really exciting to see that, and I've made some good friends. I think we all have in that, of people who are building those things. So very cool.
Well,
Great
Chris, if
first
I can
one.
jump in, if
Yeah.
I can follow up on that, one of the things, and all of us here are all members of it, so I would love to be able to do a shameless plug for it, is the fundraising.ai.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is like we've written the framework, we have pulled together all the thought leaders, the technology specialists, consultants, the nonprofit leaders, everybody, and to come together and say, how are we going to be focused on the responsible, the ethical approach to AI in the nonprofit space? And what I love sharing with nonprofit leaders is treat that as like the Better Business Bureau. If one of these startup tech companies or these consultant agencies are out there and they've endorsed the framework, let's have a conversation with them. Maybe let's do business with them. But if they haven't, I have some reservations and questions about like why they haven't endorsed the framework. So sorry for the plug, but
no, thanks for putting that plug in there. I recommend everybody check it out. Thanks for dropping that link, Carly. Wonderful. All right, cool.
I had one
go
other
ahead.
thing. This was a magic thing for me to really dig into.
You got all talkers. This is
I know. We're just going to do one question.
We're going to go in different direction.
If you're ever wondering about it, because not all of these AI are the same, you can ask for system cards, and system cards actually tell you what the safety guards for each of those different AIs are. And I think that is really crucial information for people to know how to find. So I've spent a lot of time in the Gemini system cards. And I would just encourage people to know that's where you can get, it doesn't have to be a mystery. You can go and find out what is being used for what. So
how does a layperson acquire that information?
You go Google Gemini system cards, and then once you get into it, and then once you get into it, it's an undecipherable mess. So just take a screenshot.
Just pop it into ChatGPT and it'll tell you.
Throw that.
I'll give you a summary.
That is not PII data. You can just throw that right in there and just say, tell me all about this and make a plan for us, right? So,
Yeah. Very cool. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, I didn't know that. So I wrote that down because I just learned that. That's very cool. All right, cool. All right, this next one will start with you, Mina, but feel free to pass if your voice is hurting you. This is from Amy. Does AI introduce or amplify biases? I think this is a very interesting one.
I think we all share this question with Amy. Thanks for asking. AI is pretty much like a mirror. That's how I see it. It is working with obviously, it is a tool that is working with your data that you have collected over the years, right? And then inside, behind those boxes of AI systems, it is thrown and run through a model. It gives some outputs. I'm pulling a little bit of my data scientist version of me as I'm answering it. You pull some of those models, you get the outputs, you get the predictions, you get whatever you get outside, which we call the AI output. So it is based on your data. It is based on your context. More than I will say introduce or amplify, it can amplify biases. It comes down to us really, how we are using the tool, what data are we feeding into it? Do we have confidence on the data hygiene, the context of it, the biases that might be baked into that data that is being fed into the AI systems? And ultimately, when an output comes out of the AI, what do we do with it? Are we layering our own even more assumptions, even more harmful prejudices on top of it to make sense of that output? All those things can amplify the bias. So the tool itself, it's a mirror of everything that we have done so far, and it's scaling that part. So if we are not careful and intentional, and I love what Amy asked, we are simply scaling the biases that we have had. That said, it doesn't mean we shouldn't use AI. It means we need to put more care, more responsibility, more ethical lens into whatever we do with this technology.
Anybody else that I want to weigh in on that one too? Because I think that's pretty foundational. Cool.
I'm glad we went with Mina because I mean, this is where your
That was
wheelhouse has
it.
been.
That
I
was the
mean, like,
answer.
well said, well foundation, all the things.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure in all of our experiences, everybody's used AI for something, been like, ooh, ugh. I'm not gonna say it like that. Like, I think we've all experienced that. So I'm glad someone asked about that one because that's a pretty prominent one in people's heads. Okay, next question. Oh, that was a combo question. The other part to the question was, how do we know if the AI information is correct? Which is, of course, something we all think every time. Tim, we'll start with you.
I hope we think about that every time.
Yeah.
I think that's being very generous. Here's what's so wild about AI, and I really find the technology fascinating. We're about to hit a new level with computing, because before every answer was true false. It was either accurate or not accurate, you know. And so the quick answer to this is that we don't know if AI information is correct. You have to decide that for yourself, just like you do with every conversation, with every piece of input that you get from people. And so it is really important to understand where that information comes from. Right now, the most sourced place for information from AI that is real-time information is from Reddit. I don't know. I don't know if that scares
Just don't
anybody
read the
else.
comments.
Absolutely. If that doesn't scare us all, then like we're just so we don't know that the information is correct. That doesn't make it unknowable. That means that every prompt is researched, right? So when you look at it, you're looking at this with a critical lens, which also means that you need to have some idea about what you were asking for before you put it in, and see that as this is not a replacement for your mind. I know everybody says this, but it's just so true. It needs to be an helping you with your thinking, which you then put out in the world, not the other way around.
Yeah, we actually had to analyze a data set the other day, and it said the most did this. And I was like, well, show me the numbers. It was one more than the next one. I'm like, well, I'm glad I asked, because it would have made a bad decision, right? I mean, Eric, I think you guys probably experienced stuff like that.
100%. I mean, I agree wholeheartedly with what Tim's saying. I was like, we have to have that human review, right? AI is built to predict the words sound right, but really not to fact check anything. And I think of the example to your pieces, like in practice, like we should think of AI as an intern, like, right? Like we have they're going to be enhancing the work that we do, but an intern who's actually working at lightning speed, we're not just going to let them go and with their finished product and put it out to whatever the project is. We need to review it and make sure we have some check boxes around the whole different pieces. I had a great example, a personal example that just happened yesterday was, I'm building out my team at my company, and I asked my entire team on a weekly basis to provide me a weekly report. And then I've asked my assistant, who is actually a real real person. She's not a bot. I got to meet her 2 weeks ago for the longer story. But I asked her, I was like, can you consolidate all of their weekly reports into one executive summary for me? And so she provided to me, she used AI for it. And I asked her, I was like, you could tell that AI wrote it.
Yeah.
Was like, did you just throw everything in there? And she's like, no, I actually had to review it because it wasn't accurate, a part of the different numbers or stories or different pieces. And so like there needs to be that human element to all this work that we do to make sure it's efficient and accurate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nina, anything to add to that?
No, other than that, the fact that you can ask sources to your AI systems. Where did you
Yeah,
get it
that's what I
from?
do. Yeah.
I mean, when you asked Chris, when you said you did this analysis of data and you look for the numbers, if I'm using it for data analysis, I ask it, give me the basis of your reasoning, your rationale when you calculated this. And sometimes the formulas are correct, sometimes the formulas are wrong. We can ask for sources, but even then, even when you have the sources, you have to go and do the check
The
again.
look.
Like, yes, are they pulling from the right sources or not? It's pretty much like teaching. Intern is a good way, and I have read books where it's almost said you're teaching your kid right now. You know, your kid hasn't gone through college, your kid hasn't gone through school yet, and you're teaching the kid your values. The question really comes down to, what are your values that you're passing on to your kid? It comes down to, what values are you passing on to your AI system in that case? When it's giving you the output, is it trustworthy or not? It comes down to, how have you taught this system so far? So yes, it depends on the question you ask, how you fact check, how you're asking for the sources. Yeah, I'm sort of, combining the responses Eric
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, let's change gears a little bit. And I think this gets to some really meaty ethical considerations. This is from Jody. We'll start with Eric and then we'll go around. What are the ethics of using AI to create composite stories of, for this example, a typical patient, where you don't want to obviously you can't reveal the patient, but it's a composite story that reflects that. What sort of ethical implications would you say about that, or is it good to go?
I think I answered this question for the study that you guys put together, which I love the book and the ebook that you
Yeah,
guys provided
Carly
earlier
did a great
this year.
job on that.
And it was so good on it for your entire team. And I think that's also a good little download for folks to be able to go into. But the idea here is actually kind of tricky because it's at the heart of authenticity, right? You know, a composite story might feel efficient, a way to show that typical impact without needing to highlight that single person. But if you're not transparent, you're misleading the audience, right? So the ethics really hinge on being honest. Are we saying this in a representative example? Are we presenting it like someone else's actual lived story? If it's the latter, that crosses the line into, fabricating the story. And, again, I go back to what I said earlier, trust is the most valuable currency nonprofits have. And I think we need to continue to, focus on that. And when we break that trust, it's going to be hard to get it back. And so at the end of the day, I'm a big believer, and we need to use those composites, label them as such, and stick with the real stories, even though they're not so neat.
Well, in some senses, that it softens the edges of a story sometimes, which enables biases, and and that's a whole mess. So,
Yep.
yeah, Mina, Tim, any addendum to that?
Tim, go ahead, answer.
I mean, the best example of this that I know of is on the line with us, and it's Dan Kershaw, who did an amazing job with this back when it was still in Midjourney, and you had to generate images out of there. If you go to this site right here, you'll see something that says the picture isn't real, but the reality is.
Mhm.
And I think this is exactly how we should be dealing with this issue of not wanting to put people on display, and at the same time creating in people's minds a reality for what's happening to people. And so, the story behind that is that Dan compiled all of these stories, that he was sitting at this intersection that we're talking about right now, unable to know how to use these stories, and chose to use AI to create some of those composites, and especially the images behind them. So I think that's I think that's actually a really good signpost on what that can look like in a positive way.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that link.
I'm gonna add the example, or maybe combine the question, Amy's question to Jody's question that we are answering right now, Chris. If we have to, let's say you have to write a story about Meena, who grew up in India, and you don't know enough Meenas or their stories, for someone who has traveled across the country, grew up in different parts of India, and you're writing a story that can speak to that audience, and you go to AI and you ask, I want this is the kind of the profile of Meena. You haven't used her name, but you have used a bit of this background information, and you bring out a story. There is still a responsibility of not perpetuating that bias by going out and talking to a real Meena. Meena, tell me, this came out of AI. Yes, I'm going to tell all other future Meenas that we have used AI system to generate this story. That's part of the transparency piece. That's part of the accountability piece. But a part remains important is going out and talking to the community when you're building stories out of AI. So going out and talking to an actual human being, actual Meena, saying, is this part what we found from about growing up in India or about growing up and doing this in this part of the world where the data doesn't exist enough for us, or we don't have enough, connections with people. Is this true? Does this hold true? And that's how we make sure that how we are, whatever the storytelling that is happening using this AI system is ethical or not. So I'm going to use that as an example, Chris.
You know what I mean? You got me thinking through that too, is like, this is such a good question.
Yeah, it's media.
Yeah, and it's like I think of like the practical use. I'm going beyond just AI, right? Like, so I'm a Pittsburgh. Most of you guys know that. I serve on the Children's Advocacy Center board of directors, which is, I mean, if you know anything about what advocacy centers do, it's terrible, right? They're dealing with the human trafficking, really bad things that are happening to kids in our communities, and we struggle with that as a board of how do we be authentic and tell the story of these kids in an authentic way to our donors. And like we just did this about a month ago. We had a gala. It's a small gala. I'm not a big fan of events, but we had a small gala where we brought the kids that in there and they were behind stage and they told their story on the microphone. So you heard their story. It was authentic, but we've never seen them. And it was the privacy and it was high, like all the things. And they, these are questions we should be asking in our nonprofits on a daily basis, in my opinion.
Love that.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. Yeah, this is a pretty foundational question. I just always think like AI sometimes has a tendency to like soften the edges on things. And not to quote Bob Dylan, but people contain multitudes. And that's what makes them interesting, and that's what makes you connect with them. And so I think it's careful to not soften those edges too much. And that can lead to stereotyping. Cool. Well, great. That was a good question. Next question for Betsy, from Betsy. How can I use AI without jeopardizing the need to preserve confidentiality? I think that kind of goes along with the last one. Eric, we'll start with you and then go Meena and whoever else wants to answer.
I mean, the confidentiality, I mean, we have to create those guardrails. We have to, remove identifying information. We need to keep our prompts anonymized. We need to make sure our systems and data security have some standards. If we don't have an AI governance policy, we need to start there. I love sharing with folks, like we as nonprofit leaders have a gift acceptance policy, but, do we have an AI governance policy? We need to get into that same point. But again, like AI can help polish, summarize, build that structural information, but it shouldn't be a, shortcut for, breaking privacy and breaking that trust where I went back to.
Oh.
Anything that, yeah, Meena?
That's my bad voice and making me slow. I forgot we are going this route. Eric gave a fantastic response, and Tim will, Chris. So I'm going to take a step back and say, before we speak about AI, making things confidential and safe with AI, take a step back and think about data equity. Think about how the consent you took or did not take when you were collecting that data that you are now feeding into AI systems. So when we are talking about confidentiality in the AI systems, think about consent, the step before. And the other thing that I will include is when you are I've been trying this with my clients, I've been trying this by myself, is when you're using the AI system, include your AI governance policy if you have one, and definitely include a data privacy policy. Data privacy policy is still needed, it's different than your AI governance policy. And whatever you do with your AI system, once you have that consent piece clarified, how did we obtain this data about these survey users that we are now feeding into AI system? Also upload your data privacy policy. Say, this is our guardrails, this is our ethics, this is who we are, and this is the boundary under which we are in which we are operating. So whatever you are producing, you're ensuring that it's aligned with your all these important policies that you must have.
Mina is like the smartest person in our
I
industry.
mean, of course.
So
Right,
great.
yeah.
Oh my
Like,
God.
why are
Chris,
we here?
I'll need the recording for this portion.
We'll break it up into little bits, and it'll just be a mega
Yeah.
shot of everybody complimenting you. Tim, anything to add to that one about confidentiality?
I mean, I threw in a template, a nonprofit AI policy template I worked
thank
on.
you.
Absolutely. I cannot stress this enough. Separate your policies out. If you've got cybersecurity and data privacy, data retention inside your AI governance, it's going to create issues for you. So completely agree about taking those out. The other thing I would say is you can use AI to help with those guardrails. So create an agent that knows all of your policies and then run your stuff through and make sure, like, is this adhering
That's
to our
cool.
policies, right?
Yeah.
So this is where we should be using AI to take the guesswork out and making it more ethical. And I think one of the big mistakes to make is to just think of AI as one thing, and it's not. Right? There's different models with different levels of intelligence and different reasoning levels, and you can create custom instructions that advise on how it will behave. All of those things are possible, and AI is definitely more consistent than humans, so we should be relying on it in a lot of these areas.
But it's not Skynet or the Matrix yet. We're not there yet. It's not just
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah.
Enjoy it while you can. No, that's cool. That's a great way to think about it. And thanks for sharing that policy. I think that's something that everybody can definitely benefit from. Cool. All right. Next question. We'll start with Mina, and then pass it on. So what are the ethical implications of using AI to simulate or fill in parts of a person's story when details are missing? I think that's a very unique nuance to this. Mina, we'll start with you.
I mean, we immediately alienate the person. So you filled up a story about Mina, who grew up in India in different parts of the country, and you used AI. You never went back to check in with actual human being who did grow up in that part of the world. And you produce something and you let it sit on your website or your annual report and then send it out. And then an actual human being read it. And now I feel like, well, you do not see me. You erased parts of my story. You made some assumptions. And not only did you break the trust that you may or may not have built with me as a human being before this, you are also jeopardizing the trust that you may have with my community of people, where I'm going to say, I don't trust this organization, this mission, who produced this thing about us. And I don't see any parts of reality into it as much as I would like to see. So we are literally, bottom line is, we are risking the relationship. We are risking the relationship with a person, a donor, a community member, as well as the entire community right there. I've seen this happen way too many times. Unfortunately, where I will be pulled in when a Diwali function is going to be put in, or a Holi function is going to be. These are all Hindu festivals, and once they are placed on a calendar or on a sheet, that's when I am given, here, we are having this. Would you like to come? And you're welcome to wear your attire. Well, a lot of questionable things. We are building a culture where we can trust each other, care for each other, have integrity with each other, and that can only be reflected in data when we do good ourselves. So when I say I'm kind of taking into a tangent. You hear a lot, how do we do good with AI? Well, you have to be good yourself. We cannot replicate being good and automatically assume the tool will do the good for us. So it just affects the relationship. I'm going to say that.
So good. I hate this question. I don't like this question at all. I don't think you should be inventing any piece of this into this storyline at all. I think we should be using AI to strengthen, embolden, power, build on that trust that Mina is talking about. When we like go down and invent stories, like if we're doing science fiction, sure, yeah, but we're not. We're doing real stories and experiences and everything else. So no, I don't like it.
I'm sure Tim.
I mean, I probably don't spend enough time in this area to know the specifics of this question. When I read it, I was like, oh, like you don't know what color hair somebody has. This is a terrible example, but it's like I think I focused on the fill-in details, and I'm thinking small details. And in that case, like I don't see how using AI to fill in small details is different than using your mind to. And I don't have an abundance of executive function as an ADD person. So everything I can cognitively unload with AI is a huge benefit to me. So I would say like, maybe this is type 1, type 2 territory where there are really like small enough details that it doesn't matter. And it would be weird to call them up and ask about it, right? If that's what we're talking about, for crying out loud, like fill it in. If what you're talking about is major plot points and character development, like yes, please do not. Like don't fill in at all. Go get the real story. So yeah.
You and I are saying the same thing. I'm like strengthen, like don't make up, fabricate. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, if it feels, I always tell my kids this, like, if it feels yucky, then don't. That means it's a bad thing to do. If you don't
Chris,
feel good about it.
Can I reiterate and remind all of us, all 57 of us, that how important it is to talk to the community when you are using your AI systems? And I want to name the moment we are living in right now. It is so dangerous. We are constantly being threatened as a sector, what we can collect and what we can speak of and what we cannot speak of and what to erase. And that is going to affect the data that we will have in the next few years in the systems, and that will affect eventually what AI will be fed. And so it is extra careful to talk to our communities when we are collecting that data and as we are feeding it into AI systems to make sense out of it.
Yeah.
I think that is a meta point that often
That is a
evades
huge
most
point.
of us. Like, sure, yeah, no points this round to me. Like,
I'm gonna think about that one tonight when I'm laying in bed.
Completely
Yeah.
agree. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's really important to understand.
Yeah, that's a good philosophical point right there, I think. Cool. All right, on to the next question. Let's see here. So how do we talk about AI? This is from Crystal, I believe. How do we talk about AI used transparently, both internally and with external audiences who may be skeptical, especially when our brand voice prioritizes trust, clarity, and joyful connection? So how do you communicate that, to your community? Eric, we'll start with you.
I mean, the way I read this, and it's not been published yet, but Nathan Chappelle and Cherian Koshi have put together a report on like donors and how they feel about a nonprofit using AI. I don't want to like give away the lead or anything else because I know that's going to be published here shortly, but they basically interviewed over 1,000 individual donors to hear that. And they came back overwhelmingly of that our donors are expecting us to be using AI in all of the work that we do. The average nonprofit has less than 3 employees, but and so we need to go faster on all the different areas, but we need to be transparent. We need to communicate. We need to have a policy. We need to share that, this was written with AI, our website, or whatever you want to do to be able to amplify the work that we're doing.
Anyone else to join in on that one? Otherwise, I think that's pretty succinct. I skipped the question because Tim, we're going to come back to you, but yeah, finish up.
Okay. Yeah. The only thing I would say on that is yes, transparency is important and accountability is even more important, right? Yeah. So you're accountable for everything that you produce, whether it's Excel or AI. And I feel like that's really critical to hand as guidelines to all staff people. You're accountable for the work that you do, whether it's AI generated or otherwise, you're still accountable for it. That'd be my only
You know,
addition.
it's something I was talking to a nonprofit, that piece about accountability, and this is going to go down a tangent, but it was interesting. Was like someone was using AI and it would maybe misspelled a word or something in the messaging, whether it was digital or direct mail. I can't remember the actual story. And they were like complaining about the robots, right? They're like, I can't believe they did it messed up and it misspelled and da da da. And I'm like, did you ever have a human error? Like, did you let your intern or whatever else because they misspelled someone's name? Like, we're so quick to push them out, but we're also not worried about our humans, right? Like, so I think it's this, we need to work collaboratively together.
I think there's a difference between ethics, whether it's okay to use it. It's like the Jurassic Park, like just because you can do it doesn't mean you should do it. Whether or not it's effective might be a different thing, because I personally, if someone were sending me AI donor engagement all the time, I'd be like, okay, like varying levels, right? Everybody's different. And so like the personalization is very important. I think this is so interesting though. I think, and this is like the future right now. Like a lot of great companies are working on this stuff and nonprofits are using it.
I'm gonna add one more point to that.
Yeah.
Everything that Eric and Tim said, for every organization, document that. We are talking about what works today and what's not, and things are going to evolve and it's going to change. That is given, but document that. And usually in my world, documentation, that means turning it into a policy, like an AI governance policy or a data policy, or I like to call AI values, commitment statement, whatever you might want to call it. Document that, because that is what is the clarity, that the foundation that you are building of who you are as an organization, who you are as a team. And that is important to be documented. And in those documentations of policies, I have seen most policies that comes to me for reviewing, they're very inward looking. We as staff members will use AI for this image or not, or this product or not, or this thing or not. I want you to start including your external audiences as well. How are you holding yourself accountable for the grantees or for the donors or for the external people who haven't become part of your world just yet, but carry everything possible to carry the same spirit of generosity? How do you include them in this piece of transparency by adding that language into your policies? How are we going, whatever we are going to share, hold ourselves accountable, include that language, make it tangible, make it something where you can point people to that this is what we are holding ourselves up against. So reminding people about policy.
Yeah, and that actually goes really well into the next question, which was supposed to be the question before this, because it talks about ethics and how to stay ahead of things, right? It's very hard. Nonprofits are very busy. So, and they can't stay up to date with every single thing that's important to running a nonprofit. So how can nonprofits stay ahead of the curve ethically as AI storytelling tools become more advanced? There's going to be more variety in vendors. There's going to be, and policies are going to need to change over time as the technologies change. So Tim, how do people kind of stay ahead of the game or stay up to date even if they're still trying to tread water?
So just to put a fine point on how real this issue is, my job is to know what's happening in the AI world. I spend hundreds of dollars every month to have advanced levels of any tool that I decide
So ask
is
Tim.
interesting. No, and I'm telling you, I can barely keep up. And this is what I do for hours and hours every week. So you cannot stay ahead. You could barely keep up. And that doesn't matter. And I'll tell you why. Because that is now, that rate of change is constant. And you can assume that you will always be chasing and you will always be behind it. So don't worry about it. What you should worry about instead is clarity of what you know about your organization, the context that you're building, and the documentation that Mina was just talking about, which is all the why you made the decisions that you made. Because if you can create a strong context and knowledge base, and then combine that with an ability for your team to be able to make changes rapidly and to have more conversations, it won't matter if you're behind or ahead, because you can move your team to a next tool and you can move your data and your data context and knowledge to a next tool rapidly. Like MCPs are making this seamless. But what you can't do is you can't recover that knowledge that you had, and you can't, if you're fighting for context all the time, it's all going to be wonky. And wonky is a very technical term, so you may not
I
have
love the word
heard
wonky.
it, but there you go.
No, it's almost like how language was like 4 or 5 years ago, where the nonprofit industry really caught up to using the most, the modern language to talk about their mission and talk about the people they serve.
Yeah.
And people have the same anxieties, right? And so now it's really just kind of shifted to this now. So, no, I love that. That's great. Anybody else to chime in on that one?
I mean, I'll like double click and go a different route with that, with where Tim is heading is like the best things we can do is like, he's absolutely right. You know, like where we know of AI and tools 2 weeks ago is totally different than where we are today. We're moving that fast in this space, like these new tools and everything else. But where we need to go bring it back to in nonprofits is really, we need to focus in on, our ethics muscle, right? Like we need to build the regulations internally to figure out what are the guidelines, what's okay, what's off limits, how do we use AI? How do we talk to our donors and communities? We need to train our staff on how to use AI responsibly and give them those guardrails I talked about earlier, right? We need to continue to listen to our audiences, because if it looks like a duck and it walks like a duck, it's probably a duck, right? Like if we don't trust it and we don't like it, it's probably unethical. We don't want to do it. And so AI will always be advancing it. But at the end of the day, we need to be focused on what is our North Star for our organization. Is that dignity, that trust, that consent, the focus on our donor, our program, and like the solid ground that we have is going to be able to amplify the work that a tool, because like remember, AI is a tool. We're just the strategist. We're the human element of it. And I think that's where we're going to be able to go.
Yeah, I love it.
I'm gonna just say that, take off the pressure that you have to stay ahead of the curve. I mean, I don't even like that sentence. Stay ahead of the curve. Who asked me to? Why am I supposed to always carry this
Yeah.
unnecessary pressure to stay ahead of the curve? I'm supposed to be better than who I was yesterday, slightly, slowly, softly. And that's just enough. We are here for the relational work, the relationships that we build. So don't carry the unnecessary, ridiculous pressure of staying ahead of any random curve.
Well, it seems like you guys are saying, like don't beat yourself up about it. Like just have a good moral compass, a good code, a good document, and like that's the foundation. Don't overcomplicate things. No, I like that. That's good. Everybody's very busy, and it's hard to have all these documents that like lay everything out. So I think that's probably
And
welcome.
I'll just say, I don't think I said this clearly. Your human stack is your people's ability to work together on it. That is way more valuable than your tool.
Yeah.
Getting alignment there will create all of the other alignments that you need. If you don't have that, you're not going to get it. Also, one tool to check out is Avid. It's infrastructure rich and is a really unique way of looking at data flow that I had not seen before. So if you haven't checked out Avid, just going to put a plug in for Eric there.
Oh, the best. Well, and I'll keep going with that because you just laid it up there. Is the one thing I love about our machine learning in the back end is like we don't look at just like what's out there in the space of like OpenAI and Claude and Gemini and all those different things, because those are just, they're going to tell us how we want to be best practices, where our data set in the back end is actual best practices of fundraising, best practice of how to write a thank you, how to do a donation. So like it is the correct and the ethical way for fundraising in that machine learning and AI. So yeah. Thanks, Tim. That was unexpected.
Yeah, I love it.
Great. All right. Next one I'm gonna skip around a little bit here. So if nonprofits choose, we have about 10 minutes or 5 minutes left to questions, so we'll go a little bit faster here. If nonprofits choose to use AI for their storytelling, communications, or marketing, do they need to disclose to their audience that content was created with AI? Mina, we'll start with you. I mean, this is a pretty standard question you probably get all the time.
Yes, you should. I mean, Tim shared this furniture bank example from Dan, and I love that example. We should include, if you're building some images and saying this is who our audience is, then yes, do include that. Or this is who our community is, or we used parts of this annual report that we are building. These are the parts that are generated out of AI. I will encourage that kind of transparency. When we say our donors expect us to use AI, this is one of the ways you can send them back the information. You expected us, we are using it ethically with guardrails in these parts, and this is how we are choosing to use it. There's always has to be that word choice. We are making choices in how and who and when we are using our AI systems, and we can should communicate that back.
So you would
I'm-
maybe something like sending an email out to everybody that says, hey, we're going to start using AI communicators. Something like that. Is that kind of what you're saying?
y- we are building trust, which means we have to remind our communities again softly over and over again, this is who we are and this is how we are choosing to use AI. So if I'm using and generating 15 images that I'm using over social media and reports and my emails, I'm going to highlight below every image, this is an image that was generated by an artist, or this is a generated by AI system. This is the prompt that I used. It really comes down to over and over reminding people that we are using this technology and we are choosing to use it with the guardrails that we have. I've even seen some of my clients being so mindful of linking their AI policy
Love it.
in their email, that this is who we are with which we are operating.
Eric.
And I love this because I think through, I mean, shout out to, if you don't know her, get to know her. She's one of the other smartest persons in our space, is Lynn Wester. I just had dinner with her maybe a month and a half ago. She's the donor relations guru. She's built a business on teaching nonprofits on how to say thank you and show gratitude. They write thank you cards, they write content, they do all the different things. And she made a side comment, but we were having this conversation about AI, and her whole business is content generation. And so think it through that. Like, she could be throwing in a Claude GPT, all the different things, whatever, and she could run through the races, but it's not authentic. She has an AI policy that she will use AI for everything other than the thank you and the content. And I think that is so cool from a business standpoint. And I think that's why I talk about guardrails, is like, think about what we do in our nonprofit and what can we use it for and what's not going to be authentic on the other side. So she's writing real, that's a human thank you cards instead of everything else.
Lynn is amazing. I think we all. Tim, put a hat on this one.
Yeah, I am really torn on this one because I would never want to be the idiot that's crossing what Mina Dawes is saying, but I actually don't know. I think about this a lot. So Mina, real curiosity question, and we should have coffee. I mean, we should have coffee anyway, but I'd love to chase this down because I struggle to understand how that is beneficial or what value that creates when we're all using tools all the time and AI is just another one. And then I've got a fear that we're actually elevating the role of AI by creating so many guardrails around it that we're making it seem like it is a completely new and fragile thing. And so I'm not saying anything here except that I'm confused by this. If you get my AI policy, you'll see that I have a slightly different take, which is accountability over transparency. My real question here is that a timing thing? Like, in the future, will everybody just assume it's created by AI and we won't need to do that? Or is there just always a value in that? So those are my questions.
I love it, Tim, so much. I mean, yes, to the coffee. And that's a very public way to ask, let's go on a coffee.
Wait,
I know. Right, Eric, you're invited
Going
too.
in the supercut too.
Absolutely. Right, yeah.
But yeah, I love your questions. I love that you say that it's a confusion thing. We'll talk more about that. But including a little bit of that, whether it was my artist Sky who designed my image or whether it's the Gen AI tool that created, I think I'm trying to distinguish that future state where we will automatically assume that things are going to come out of AI, and our trust, generally speaking, in the world is going to get a hit. Can we trust this? Can I trust this? Is it being generated by AI, even if they're not saying it? I want to distinguish that by owning the pieces I'm creating. This is how it is coming out. So even at the risk of creating 2 lines extra, I'm creating that. But that said, you have to be careful of to what extent are we putting these guardrails against. Like, I'm working with an organization right now, a foundation, who have 7 lawyers in place. Any tool that any staff member wants to use, it has to first go to the 7 lawyers. They have to approve it, and then they can use it. I think it's very detrimental, it's going to cause more issues to that nature of innovation and that nature of trust in the staff. So you're right, we have to talk about the nuances. So yes to the coffee, my friend.
I feel like some clarity that came from your response there, Mina, is that we do not need people to trust AI. We need people to know they can trust us. And I feel like that's the North Star that
Yeah.
organizations have to find for themselves, right? And that's gonna require navigation like all substantial things require.
I also fear for my indigenous artists like Sky, who I don't want Sky to be lost in everything coming out of AI. I want Sky to be highlighted when it's her image that's going to be used. And I want that over and over again. Which is why I want these distinguished pieces. Anyway, Chris, sorry, we took it on a tangent.
Well, look, if you ask me, the CEO of MemoryFox, I would say user-generated content's never going out of style. So,
Strongly agree.
that's my punk rock ethos is like people never go out of style. But okay, all right, we have time we got to go quick on this one. So this is a lightning round kind of thing. What is one final thought you'd like to leave our audience with today? This is always a great last question. It could be something we didn't have time to discuss or something you'd like to reiterate. And let's start with Tim. We'll go Eric, and then Nina will take us home.
We'll close it
my
out.
gosh.
Yeah.
I think that if this panel is going to show you anything, it is that you're going to find answers to these questions in people, not AI. So find your Minas, find your Erics, find your Tims, go to them and sort this out for yourself with your organization, because at the end of the day, this is a very human decision you've got to make about how to approach all of this.
Love it. Eric.
I love the moment where like I'm all serendipity where we are, all about the experience. You guys all know me very well about the experience. And right now I'm looking directly outside. I'm in Indianapolis. I'm a graduate of the Indianapolis Lilly School of Philanthropy. And I remember going back I'm just thinking through this question. I'm thinking through where we are. And I just think through the fundamentals of fundraising. And I remember learning about it in that one course, which was linkage, interest, and ability. And like the history of AI is in the last 10 years, but the reality, it's been in our space forever, like with RFM and building relationships and going faster. How do we become more efficient? But at the core, we need to still be, focused on trust and content and dignity. And, yes, the stakes are higher because we're being judged more. We have year-over-year budgets. There's fewer staff, less resources. But really, at the end of the day, if we keep donors and our people and our community at the forefront, at the center of what we can do, AI can actually amplify the work we do, right? And it can be enhancing it. So we are going to need the humans in our teams. It's not just that shiny tool and everything else, but like my encouragement to you guys is, don't get lost in the hype. Focus on the fundamentals. Use AI where it's going to help you. But let's focus on the ethics. Let's focus on the efficiency, and let's keep going forward and find our true north.
Wonderful. Nina, take us home.
Okay, my final thought would be keep focusing on finding out who you are today. It's going to change. Who Mina is today is going to change in 5 years, is going to evolve in 10 years. And we are getting to a place where we are so comfortable talking to a window called AI window that it can show me who Mina is. I feel like I already see these prompts based on everything me. Tell me this is da 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 da. It's almost like it's so good at mimicking, and it can give you the answers about you for yourself. But take that time outside of these AI systems to find out who you are today, because that's what's shaping your values and how you are choosing to use or not use AI. And that is what's going to make this conversation sustainable and ethical for a long time. So spend time on finding out who you are.
I love that, Nina. Nice little philosophical exclamation point at the end of this. Thank you. I appreciate that. All right, cool. Well, thank you again to our panelists. I personally learned a lot today, and I took some notes. This was definitely one of the most rewarding that we've ever had, and I think it's such a cool topic. So before everybody goes, we have a couple great offers for you to learn about today. First, if you're a nonprofit that operates on less than a $1.5 million budget, we have a new offering here at MemoryFox called MemoryFox Flame that we're very excited about. And this version of MemoryFox is built specifically for small nonprofits like you to tell great stories all year round. And for larger nonprofits, let's meet. You can always book a time with us to discuss your ethical storytelling goals one-on-one with my team. And we love to meet new people and learn about everything you guys are doing. It's just such a wonderful treat to do what we do every day. So appreciate you all. Carly's dropping the links. And most of all, I want to thank you all for your service to your communities and your commitment to making the world a better place through storytelling and leveraging technology for good. So thank you all, and everybody have a great day.
Bye, friends.
Ciao.
Everybody.
See ya.